We are honored to be joined by Mr. Vice President Steve Wiltfong, On3's Vice President of Recruiting and the Transfer Portal, fresh off a Colorado recruiting update and coaching 3 travel baseball games in the rain and the cold. But he's got to get to Nashville because there is a big doings happening in Nash Vegas tomorrow. Jared Curtis, the number 1 quarterback in the class of 2026, is deciding on Cinco de Mayo between Georgia and Oregon. Steve, how you handicap this one?
Talking to sources on my way home from travel baseball tonight, I would still give the edge to Georgia going into this announcement, but we never sleep on the Oregon Ducks. His relationship with Will Stein, the offense that the Ducks have, how prolific the quarterback position has been, and how explosive the offense has been. And I think he feels really comfortable in Eugene and could see himself being uber successful at Oregon. But Georgia, the program looking to bring this recruitment back full circle. He was obviously committed to the Dogs, decommitted in the fall, and it's kind of been a back and forth with Oregon. But the intel has favored Georgia down the stretch. They just kind of need to hold off Oregon from what I understand here. So we'll see what it is tomorrow officially, but I would give Georgia the edge, I would deem Georgia the favorite, with Oregon still having pretty good odds going into the announcement. He made 2 videos. I talked to his agent on Friday, talked to his mom on Friday. He had an in-home visit with Coach Bobo, an in-home visit with Coach Stein. They were all supposed to come back tonight, but he canceled those trips to have a clear mind and be able to do what he's got to do. But 2 videos were filmed, so that's how close this recruitment is. That's how back and forth it's been. But my intel, and could change in 20 minutes, but right now I would give Georgia I would make them the favorite.
Steve, when you say hold off in the last minute, we obviously know that late flips and late surprises happen in recruiting all the time. But what does that look like in the background? What is Oregon doing in the next 12 hours
Right. So oftentimes people just go and assume that someone upped their offer and that moves the needle and that's what gets it done. And that does happen sometimes, but sometimes, man, it's just who gets to have the last conversation, when it's a recruitment that's that close at a place where you could really see yourself at both places. That last conversation, that last in-home, that last visit can sometimes be the difference. So it's not always like a financial offer that gets it done at the end. Sometimes it's just that last opportunity to speak to a prospect and remind them of all the reasons why they love that program. And it's the last thing on their mind before they go and make the announcement or sign the papers or whatever it may be. He talked to Dan Lanning today. So, but again, with all that being said, my intel makes Georgia the favorite going into it tomorrow, but we'll see what it is and how it comes out.
I was reading an interview with his agent, Peter Webb, and I thought it was interesting what he said, because he said basically he had told Jared to imagine that the financial offers are the same and then do your pros and cons list as if that's not a factor. And then also, it just that these 2 weren't the highest offers anyway in terms of biggest bag. So if it had been biggest bag, it would have been somebody other than these 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, and we talked about this the last time I was on your show, Georgia getting more competitive with some of their coveted targets of what it could look like financially has certainly helped them be in these at the end. Now we'll see if they get them over the top, right?
What's the timing of this, Steve? So, because we're in May now, but I would imagine that if you're the number 1 quarterback recruit, you're obviously the linchpin of a class. There are probably other players waiting for you to decide if they want to come play with you or not. Why this date, Cinco de Mayo, and not say, right before the season starts?
Well, obviously, when you're a player of the magnitude of Jared Curtis, you can help this class come together after you jump in the fold. So I think in a perfect world, whether you're the quarterback and the school, you want to get in the fold and help build your class and peer recruit and get guys around you. And I would imagine that whoever Jared lands with on Monday, he'll spearhead the recruiting efforts from a peer standpoint on the trail. And if you're Georgia, it's not hard to get to Athens for all the big recruiting weekends. And if it's Oregon, he's already been out there ample time. So I would imagine he would get back for some of their big recruiting weekends, whether it's Saturday Night Live or what have you, on their recruiting calendar coming up.
Steve, the thing that I think is really interesting is that Oregon has become a power, right, in the last few years in recruiting. And I'm wondering, with a national 5-star quarterback prospect the way it is, like, is Oregon already arrived as one of the big hitters in this sport in terms of like talent accumulation? Or do you think there's like symbolism or national recruits or things like this that could put them over the top? Like when you think about the Ohio States, the Georgias, the Alabamas, the legendary recruiting outfits that are finishing the top 3, 4, top 1 every year before NIL, like, is Oregon at that level in your mind now already?
Well, they had a top 5 class last year. They're a program that has certainly showed that they have the chops. They can go into Alabama and beat Auburn at the last minute, flipping one of the top corners in the country from Ohio State in the process, and Naeem Offord. They kill it in the transfer portal. They have a lot of infrastructure and support. Marshall Malchow, their general manager, is one of the most organized, experienced people in the game. Before working with Dan Lanning, he was with Chris Peterson, he was with Nick Saban, and he was with Kirby Smart. So to work under those 3 head coaches and then work for Dan Lanning, I don't know if there's anyone that does what he does that can boast the type of head coaches that he has worked under outside of Mark Pantoni, who worked for Urban Meyer and Ryan Day. So he's got a lot of experience. They're a well-organized machine from a recruiting standpoint. And then Oregon's had a lot of success on the field. Now, certainly there's a few schools that have had more success, but we've seen Oregon play in the title game. We've seen them in college football playoffs and compete and win conference championships. And this is a program that's going to be on the short list of schools you point to and say they have a chance to win the national title this year. And had it not been a 12-team playoff, they certainly would have been in the Final Four. And even before that, they would have played in the national title game in the old BCS era with the season that they had. So they had a great year. They're trying to win that last game, which us 3 know as well as anybody, it's hard to win the last game. They're shooting 66 on the golf course, and they're trying to figure out how to shoot 65. It's hard to shave those strokes. It's easy to go from 90 to 80, 80 to 70. They're trying to shave a stroke or two. And with that, you need to stay healthy. There's just, you need to have some luck go along with building a talented roster along the way. And they just, they got smashed in the Rose Bowl, obviously, and it ended a dream season. But they had one of the best seasons in college football last year, and that should mean something. And they're in there. They're in the right conversation, and they're trying to win the last game. So
you mentioned that you get a quarterback like Jared Curtis in the fold, whether it's Georgia or Oregon, and he can peer recruit. It's not lost on me that the number 1 recruit in the class of 2026, Jackson Cantwell, the offensive lineman from Missouri, also has Georgia and Oregon in his final group here. I think about this, Steve. It's interesting to me because, for the 15 years or so before NIL started, those guys would get together, form a super team, and then they would all kind of coalesce. Is that happening as much in the NIL era, or is that does one of the guys taking one spot mean, oh, there's bigger budget to get this other guy?
I think that sometimes we have seen, if you have some extra capital from a recruitment that you lost, it can be used elsewhere. So I don't know how that works with these particular recruitments, because I think with Jared Curtis and Jackson Cantwell, a lot of the heavy lifting has been done in those discussions of what off the field opportunities look like at your respective programs. He's just dotting I's and crossing T's with his family and representation. And Jackson Cantwell has one more visit to Georgia before he announces his college plans.